We are live streaming to YouTube tonight. Hey, Nichelle. Hey, 2 nights in a row, Nichelle. There's my partner in crime. I know, and you're an early bird too, so man. Well, it is 7 o'clock. Corbin, if you're ready to get going, I'll get us recording and start us off. Y'all set?
I'm ready.
Hey, Emily. All right, resume. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name's Jennifer Harville, and I'm a Natural Resources Specialist at the Tug Hill Commission in Watertown, New York. I'd like to welcome you to the webinar tonight called Right-Sizing Stream Crossings for Fish, Wildlife, and Resiliency. This evening, Corbin Gosier, the Aquatic Habitat Program Manager with the New York State DEC's Division of Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Ecosystem Health, is going to talk about designing culverts and bridges to minimize impacts to stream habitats and aquatic connectivity. Corbin oversees the statewide implementation of programs that address impacts from physical disturbance to water bodies and riparian areas, road stream crossings, water withdrawals, and hydropower projects. Little housekeeping first, you're all muted to reduce background noise, but if you have questions during the webinar, please use the chat box and we're going to answer them at the end of the presentation. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website when we are through. And now without further ado, here's Corbin.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, for having me. You can hear me okay?
Sounds great.
Excellent. Yeah, so I was invited to give this presentation last year, but it was right around the time that the pandemic began, and so I wasn't able to do it. So it's pretty much the same presentation. I'm happy to talk about this topic tonight. We did post a copy of the presentation last year, so if anyone looked through it, it's going to be a pretty similar presentation. I didn't change very much. But yeah, this is a topic I'm really excited about. I'm interested to talk to everyone. I know there's plenty of people that are viewing this presentation tonight that know a thing or two about road stream crossings and right-sizing road stream crossings. So hopefully there'll be something for everyone. But we'll see. So let's get started. So there are lots of resources available. So, in addition to what you're going to hear, in the next 45 minutes or so, certainly want everyone to be aware that you can go to our website, the New York State DEC's website, and there are a few places you can learn about stream crossings. We have stream crossing guidelines available, for folks to read. This image over here on the left is sort of when we used to hand out brochures, but that brochure is available electronically, as well as a couple of different web pages. We have a permits web page that describes, guidelines and some permit issuance standards for road stream crossings and how we would like to see road stream crossings constructed. And so I did pull here in the center of the screen is just, an image showing a couple of different cross sections of a stream channel. And so many folks are probably familiar with some guidelines, including the width of the structure should be 1.25 times the stream bed width, which is measured bank to bank at the mean high water mark or the edges of terrestrial rooted vegetation, like those sorts of things. People are, a lot of people have probably heard those sorts of things, but if you want to find that information in a little more detail, perhaps, certainly go to our website. But it's not just DEC. You can go elsewhere, and you're going to find similar information. I pulled this off of the web. I like this pamphlet. This is from Wisconsin DNR. Similar brochure. This is proper design, installation, and maintenance can protect both roadways and fish. But what I'm going to spend even probably a little bit more time talking about is this document. If folks can see. This is the Stream Simulation Manual. This is a U.S. Forest Service product, and this is a really comprehensive document. So this is, 8 chapters. There's actually 10 chapters, including glossary and that sort of thing. But the appendices and just really a lot of detailed information. Almost anything you'd want to know about road stream crossing design, with an eye towards, stream simulation, meaning allowing the stream to be a stream underneath the road, simulating that stream underneath the road. So this Stream Simulation Manual, again, from the U.S. Forest Service. So I always like to talk, I do some presentations, not just about road stream crossings, but other things relating to streams, stream reconstruction, things like that. And so I like to start with just this question to get people thinking, ecologically speaking, what are streams? So how can we think of streams? And this is from the Stream Simulation Manual, so I can't claim that it is mine, but I really like it. We can think of streams as long linear ecosystems. Okay, and what does that mean? Well, for one thing, it means like how we interact with a stream and what we do in any one point on a stream. It can have effects and impacts both upstream and downstream. And another way I like to think of it is, maybe some folks on the listening to the presentation tonight are fortunate enough to have a stream that runs through their property, perhaps, or nearby, near their house. But you don't really hear the phrase of someone saying, oh yeah, I have a stream, and from start to finish, the whole thing is on my property. Anything I do there is just, it only affects the stream on my property. That's just not how these systems work. And we're going to talk a little bit more, understanding that roads are also linear features on the landscape. So you have these two linear features on the landscape that interact, and quite often. So again, just start thinking about what streams are. But I like to add to that a little bit. So more than that, I like to think, streams are long linear interconnected ecosystems. So it's not just one stream, it's that there are these small headwater streams that meet up and become second order streams, and there's a lot of interaction going on there. I think that'll be sort of important moving forward. But unfortunately, when a road stream crossing becomes a barrier, that can disrupt these linear ecosystems. And so, this is another quote. I like these kind of quotes. But so, here, streams or aquatic barriers are a growing ecological and fiscal liability. So barriers can be a problem for streams for sure. And not just for the stream. We'll talk a little bit more about the resiliency piece and how these road stream crossings, have a real part to play there. So, I guess pay attention to some of the things you're seeing here and why, what's going on. Obviously, we have a culvert pipe. It's not a round culvert pipe, but maybe a little bit more of an elliptical pipe. And to protect this outlet drop area, it looks like someone probably placed a large rock as sort of scour protection. But we'll go into a little more detail about what may be going on with crossings that look like this. So, and again, from that Stream Simulation Manual, I did pull a couple of things that hopefully help tell the story of what happens when an undersized crossing is interacting with a stream. So I do like this. And again, and everything I'm talking about tonight, I think for the most part, is available to everyone. So that Stream Simulation Manual, you can Google it, you can find the PDF document online, you can actually read through everything here. So in more detail than what I'll be able to give you. So these are all resources that are available to you all as well. I just want to see if I can pull up the highlighting tool here. Hopefully, maybe the laser pointer. Hopefully people can see this. So if we just focus on well, first of all, looking at this is a profile view of a stream. So you can imagine the stream is flowing sort of from the right-hand side of the screen up here over to the left-hand side down here. But let's just focus on this part up here before this culvert pipe has interacted with the stream at all, and look at what's going on with the stream in sort of its natural state. You know, streams are naturally going to have things like pools, like scour pools. You know, they're going to have riffles, and so they're not. It's not just a uniform stream bed elevation. And then in this situation here, you know, a log might fall, and you know, we all have seen streams. We've been around streams, I'm sure, and you can imagine a log falls in the stream, and you do get a little bit of sediment accumulation behind that log. And then water is going to accelerate a little bit over top of the log, and then you're going to get a pool formation there. So a little bit of a scour pool, even naturally. And so that's just what streams are doing. And you know, you can see some dashed lines here. I will say you don't need to know all of the details or understand all the details to get the figure, but you know, it's on here. So the VAP line is just referring to the vertical adjustment potential of the stream. So streams are, like I was sort of just describing, streams do vertically adjust. And so it's kind of good to know what the vertical adjustment potential of the stream is if you're trying to, you know, design a stream crossing or something like that. But you can see, you know, right here, this is this lower vertical adjustment potential line, lower VAP line, and then up here is the upper, where you could anticipate that the stream may be adjusting vertically. But so what happens when a undersized stream crossing is placed onto a stream channel? And especially here, I'm imagining that this was placed on the stream bed. It wasn't an embedded structure. And if it were undersized. So an undersized structure is going to cause something called constriction in a lot of cases. And we'll look at some more cross-section views of structures just to see what constriction does to a stream. And how that's going to interact with the stream and disrupt flow. And so here, what tends to happen is, you know, water has to constrict into the structure, and so it backs water up. And when it backs water up, the water slows down, and sediment particles can deposit, and so you get sediment accumulation on the upstream side of the structure. Sometimes you get pool formation up there, and so you also have flow accelerating through the structure. And then down here, you often get this Culver outlet plunge pool, because now you've concentrated the flow within the structure, and now you have that concentrated flow is now eroding this area downstream and causing this sort of plunge pool or scour pool. And so that's really a situation that can happen and does happen quite a bit when a small culvert pipe is placed on top of a stream bed. And then the stream is going to sort of try to, you know, correct itself moving downstream. Yeah, so let's see, I might have to. So just now we're going from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, but it's not, you can see this in more of a simplified figure. Again, a profile view, but you've got your culvert pipe and your structure here, and you're looking at the, you know, the surface water, and then you're looking at your stream bed elevation and your scour pool, and you can see a scour pool is really starting to form there. And what can even happen is you can get channel incision. You know, there are different ways a channel can become incised, but you know, you certainly can have enough of a scour pool that now, if you're an aquatic organism, you may have a real problem, you know, being able to go upstream, where you know, if that's what you're trying to do. So I think, let me click ahead, but we do have some quiz questions, and you know, we decided to sort of put them inside of this in the presentation rather than at the very end. So at this point, let's go for the first quiz question. And I think, yeah, oh, I got ahead a little bit, but okay. So let me back up, but it's actually on the screen, so nobody look. But so let's try this one. So as it relates to road stream crossings and aquatic connectivity, I'm going to start using this term AOP. And I want to know, get a sense of folks out there, what do you think AOP might stand for as it relates to road stream crossings? So is it aquatic organism passage, actual openness potential, area of placement, or active organization and planning? So I'll give everybody a few seconds. Well, yeah, this is excellent, and I sort of had anticipated that we have a audience that really knows their stuff. So, yeah, so this is AOP, and the term I may end up just inadvertently using AOP. That stands for aquatic organism passage. A lot of people think about fish passage maybe, and maybe use the term fish passage, and that's perfectly okay with me. But fish aren't the only organisms that utilize streams, and so we use the term aquatic organism passage, and it's going to be used a little bit more in some of the methodologies that I'm going to be talking about in just a few minutes here. So, let's try one more quiz question. Everybody did a great job, but let's see if everybody gets this next one, which is also hopefully relatively straightforward. Okay, so we're thinking about aquatic organism passage, AOP. So which of these road stream crossing characteristics would be ideal for good aquatic organism passage? Would it be a structure that has, okay, and I see a lot of people are starting to, I guess I don't need to read this for folks. Excellent. This is good. Hopefully there'll be a couple of questions that are a little more difficult as we move forward, but this is great. So yeah, and just what we've been talking about so far, if the stream bed elevation and the substrate type within the structure are the same as the stream, if they're unaffected by the structure, then that's going to allow aquatic organisms to be able to move freely upstream and downstream. So that's great. In terms of aquatic organism passage, excellent. Things like this, even constricting the channel, even if other elements of the construction are pretty good. If a culvert size is too small and that flow is constricted, sometimes there are some organisms that just can't make it through that fast of a flow, and so even something like that can prevent some aquatic organisms from certainly moving upstream. So I'm going to close that out and keep going. So hopefully we'll get to a place where people are learning some new stuff here. But so this is just from something, I'm going to show you a methodology that we use that's available to others as well. But I just pulled some images from our methodology and when we're looking at road stream crossings. And here's looking upstream from a road stream crossing, or at least from a stream crossing. This may have been a trail. But you can see what the stream wants to look like and what the stream looks like before it gets impacted by the crossing. This is the inlet of that crossing, that culvert pipe, and the stream sort of wants to be this wide. If we were going to measure the mean high water mark, those edges of terrestrial rooted vegetation would be back here certainly back here somewhere. So this culvert really appears to have been placed on top of the stream bed. Right, and now you can see the flow in the center of the channel. That's not as wide as what this stream wants to be at the inlet side. Let's take a look at what it looks like at the outlet. And so on the outlet side, we do have an outlet drop. And so that's a problem for aquatic organism passage. And I'm not certain whether this was installed that way or whether there was some scouring. It looks like maybe there's bedrock, and so potentially this was just installed without taking the stream bed slope into consideration. But either way, this is one of those crossings that's going to be a problem for aquatic organism passage. So these culverts that are acting as barriers, and here's just some other simple figures that I pulled out of the stream simulation manual because I think they can be helpful. So if you look at this area of shading, and again, remember I mentioned earlier that you get these first order or headwater streams, two first order streams combine and become second order streams. And so you can also think about that as the habitat, starting to change a little bit as well. So this gray shaded area is an area where a organism is surviving, living, reproducing. And so you could think of it in the example of the stream simulation manual. This is a salamander, but if you like to think in terms of brook trout or something like that, that's okay too for the purposes of this example. But this is the habitat in the stream that this organism is utilizing. Right. So when we have a road that crosses these interconnected ecosystems, this is, and if those crossings are barriers, this is what can happen. And so now again, the shaded area is still area that is occupied habitat. This is habitat that this organism is carrying on. But now you have these different colors of shading. And so yeah, the different colors of shading are representative of that. Now these are two populations. These now are these fish or these salamanders, they're no longer able to interact. And so you can get things like genetic isolation. Certainly these populations are not going to be as robust and as resilient as they would be if it was one large connected population, like over on the left here. But then also what you have is, certainly over time, if you don't have a large enough area, or if you don't have all of those particular things that the fish or the salamander or whatever thing of needs, then you can get these local extinctions. And so you've got these areas now where you did have, these were occupied habitat for this fish or this salamander or whatever we're talking about, but now it's not even occupied habitat anymore. And then when you think about sort of the complex interactions of different species within these ecosystems, then you can have these cascading effects as well. So we really don't want roads to be disrupting and disconnecting streams in this way as much as we can avoid it. But that's not all. It's not just about aquatic organism passage. So this is I did, after Hurricane Irene, I did some post-flood work for our agency. It was storm recovery type of work, and I took this picture. This is in Schenectady County, but you can sort of see what's going on here. This crossing doesn't look like it was that old. It does not look like it failed because it was just a really old structure. It looks pretty new. But clearly there was water was stacking up on the inlet side. You can see some indicators of where the water might have been. You see some large logs and stuff over here, so that were probably picked up. And certainly the size of this culvert pipe was not 1.25 times the stream bed width. So somewhere down here, and then these storm flows were trying to push through here, and so something's got to give. And in this case, the road didn't win. So this is going to have to be reconstructed, rebuilt, replaced. So I guess the point of this, and the point of thinking about road stream crossings and the resiliency piece, is just not to just consider those low flow conditions, maybe when when the structure is installed, but be thinking about that every spring you're probably going to have high water events, and so you're going to have these annual events, and then every couple of years you're going to have these channel forming events. We call them bank full events, and then beyond that you're going to have storms that we talk about. We use the phrase recurrence intervals. And so you'll have a storm that you may expect every 5 years, every 25 years, every 50 years. It doesn't mean that those storms are going to happen exactly on those marks. It just means like that's when we anticipate their return. Sometimes we use percentages instead. We say like a 2% chance storm for any given year would equal something like a 50-year return interval. But thinking about that and thinking about the life of the structure is also going to help us as we move forward thinking about this resiliency piece. But the good news, I think, is that there's this in the title of the slide here is shared objective. So we've spent a little bit of time talking about aquatic organism passage, or AOP. I didn't really mention this, but streams are really important corridors for wildlife movement. They do connect habitats, not just aquatic habitats, but they're connections of even terrestrial habitats, and especially through developed areas. Streams are really important corridors of movement. So again, not just aquatic organisms. But we did talk a little bit about this flood resiliency piece. And, somebody is, this asset management piece, somebody's responsible for these structures and maintaining the structures and installing them and replacing them if they fail. So that's a consideration with these structures as well. And so, but the good news is that if done right, this sort of meets in the middle at what we're calling here on this slide an optimized road stream crossing. And this image sort of shows sort of a really thoughtful approach to installing a stream crossing. And here what you can see is the stream is a stream underneath the road, right? So you still have a defined stream channel, and you still have stream bed substrate within the structure. And you can also sort of look upstream and imagine what's going to happen when you get higher flows. You get some of these spring high flow events and even storm events and things. Obviously this structure, you're not going to get water stacking up on the upstream side. You can see there's some room here. You do have dry passage for these terrestrial organisms as well. So this is just a good example of sort of what a right size stream crossing would look like. But so we've talked a lot about that. How do we accomplish it? And what are we doing specifically in New York to try to address this? We know there are issues with aquatic connectivity. And these resiliency issues and these things, I am, my job title is Aquatic Habitat Program Manager, but I'm a biologist by education, and that's I'm a biologist for DEC as well. So I'm looking at this from an ecological perspective, but there are other ways to look at it. But so if we're all on the same page and we agree that some of these structures, maybe we do want to talk about replacing them with something that's a little more like this structure on the right of your screen. How do we do that? Well, first, we need to find them. We need to identify where they are, and we need to look at them and assess them. And then it would be really helpful if there's a lot of them to rank, prioritize, and figure out which ones need to be fixed the most, right? And then I will talk about these other two pieces a little bit later on. But let's get into what are we doing to try to figure out where the bad ones are and how are we going to fix them? Well, if you look at a map of New York State, my program is statewide, so I tend to think of the entire state. Well, here's what our network of streams look like. We have approximately 58,000 stream segments, over 80,000 stream miles in New York, and they're everywhere. So, and then this is what our network of roads looks like. So you can probably maybe imagine the next slide. Every dot is a road stream crossing in New York State. So we know there are over 100,000 of them. And again, these are just road stream crossings. This isn't every culvert in the state. This is just where a road and a stream intersect. So, but unfortunately, that's good to know, and we can map things like that. But we do have this problem, or we had this problem up until 2015, is that we didn't have a good central source of information. There was information, but it was we had disconnected studies and databases. We had this has been a concern for a long time, and some good people have been working on it. But it would have been more on a regional basis, maybe not so much a statewide basis, or even beyond New York State. And so as a result, there were dissimilar assessment standards, not a lot of consistency, certainly really not a good central source of information, and publicly available. So, and again, what I'm going to talk about, I think everything I'm talking about tonight are things that people that are listening in can go and find these things are readily available at even tonight or tomorrow or whenever you want to check these things out. So we'll get to that. And so without these things in place, there's not really an effective way for like my program, or trying to figure out what are our statewide goals? How can we link funding to get some of these crossings fixed? And what are the most important, if we were going to link funding to these, what are the most important ones? Where do we want to start? And then also, besides just looking at them in terms of AOP, we need all these other things, hydrologic condition assessments, and then resiliency planning components. So let's talk about some of those. Well, the solution, or the start of the solution, is what if we had this comprehensive standardized methodology for assessing road stream crossings and a consolidated and user-friendly database. So even the public, everyone can access the data and look at these road stream crossings. Well, there's my little animation. So what I'm going to start talking about now is NAC. NAC is the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative. And so here we go. And so just a little bit of history. This project was completed in 2015. And it wasn't just New York State DEC. This is a 13-state collaboration. There were, federal agencies, NOAA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, obviously U.S. Forest Service. I just discussed that stream simulation manual. DOTs, of course, departments of transportation from various states, conservation groups. I'm sure I'm missing people, and So here's some, just a few of the agencies and organizations that help make this happen. So what is NAC? And really, I like to describe it as, the important thing is that there's a database and a standardized methodology and protocol. So there's this field survey protocol with data collection, both digital and paper. You could collect the data digitally or on paper forms and upload it to the database. So we have this public database where this data lives, and there are mapping tools available. And we also offer training on the use of the protocols and QA/QC, which is quality assurance, quality control. So we want to make sure the data are good. And then once the data are in the database, there are some automated scoring systems. So, and I'll talk about those a little bit. There's a passability scoring for once we've surveyed a crossing and uploaded the data into the database. And then there are some neat things as well. We have this Cornell model, this Culver capacity model, which I'll briefly talk about. But then also within NAC, because it works so well and people like it so much, UMass, in partnership, we're expanding some of the modules. So there'll be, right now we focus on the non-tidal module. That's the aquatic connectivity module. But there's also, condition assessments that are being worked out in terrestrial. So for people who are concerned more with terrestrial connectivity, there's a new tidal module. So just really neat stuff. So again, where can I learn more? What I would recommend is, this is the web portal. Just remember this phrase, stream continuity. So streamcontinuity.org. But really what you want to do is go to the NAC homepage, which is streamcontinuity.org/NAC. So NAACC, that's the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative. So streamcontinuity.org/NAC. But I did mention that there's a database. You can access the database through the NAC homepage, or you can just go straight to the database, which is nac.org. And that's what we'll look at. So this is that web page. This is that streamcontinuity.org/NAC, and there's just tons of information available here. So, and lots of links and different things like that. So I do recommend, if you haven't already, if you're not familiar with this web page, check it out. But if you were to be mostly interested in the database, and I'll do a quick walkthrough of that, you'll go up here to Data Center, and that's just going to take you to that nac.org. And when you go to the nac.org homepage, it will look like this. And you'll see, let's look right up here where it says search crossings. So you can all go to nac.org and you can search crossings. You don't need login credentials. Here's the login. The login is for people who are going to be uploading data into the database or doing some other things like that. But for the purposes of this, if you were to click that, if you go to nac.org, click search crossings, you're going to see an interface like this. This is how you're going to search for data within the database. You can put in as little or as much information as you'd like, but I do recommend you have to put in some information, tell it somewhere to go, because if you try to have it, and I haven't really updated this, so there's more than 43,000 records right now, and it would overwhelm the database if you try to just have it search for everything. So the first thing I would do is I would go and click here, and then for me in New York State, I select New York State. And then these are going to change a little bit. So you'll be able to select watersheds or even townships. Things will open up. Sometimes you'll be able to even select stream by stream name. And if you're already using the database and know what you're looking for and have a survey ID code or something, you could just put that right in and it'll take you right to that crossing. But if you just want to play around with the database and look and see what information is in there, you can just sort of focus on this side, narrow it down. Again, as little or as much information, but the more you narrow it down, the less work it is for the to come up to bring that data back. So then you're going to go down here, you're going to click search. And when you do, you're maybe going to get a screen that looks like this, depending on how many records come back. And over here, this is showing you, this is the crossings that are surveyed within whatever you searched for. And you may have to, it only shows so many records per page, so you may have to scroll through if you're looking for a specific stream crossing, right? But maybe you just sort of want all of the information. You want to know like all of the details about these stream crossings, or you want to mine the data for something. You want to see, well, what in this area, what is, I don't know, the average crossing width or something like that. Well, you can get these Excel reports. You can get, an Excel spreadsheet, and you can either do detailed or simplified. Or if you're doing a project or something, you can download a shapefile, a GIS shapefile. But if you're like me and you just want to see on a map the crossings you just searched for, you can just go up here and click on map results. So that's probably where I would go and what I would do. And when you click on map results, you're going to see something like this, and it probably won't look exactly like this. It'll probably be zoomed way out, and you'll have to zoom in to find something like this. But the point is, whatever you search for, you're going to see dots. The dots represent road stream crossings, of course, and the black dots are crossings that we know they're there, that they're predicted. But no one has gone out and surveyed those crossings, collected the data, uploaded those data into the database yet. But if there's a color associated with the crossing, that means there's data there. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer, I mentioned the QA/QC. It's possible that the data hasn't gone through the QA/QC yet, and so even if you were to click on one of these, that would be the reason why it might not show that crossing. But otherwise, as long as the data have been uploaded and then someone has checked it to make sure it's accurate, it should be right there. So, and what do those dots mean? Well, those dots and the colors of the dots, even just looking at the map, are an indication of how much of a barrier that crossing is. So I've got to get rid of this tool here for a minute. Just click off of it. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So the green. I'm seeing a green, but green is going to mean full passage, and then red is a severe barrier. And I'll explain where the database gets that information from. It's just sort of a prediction based on the data that have been entered into the database. And so there are these colors in between. So you can already look at this and sort of have an idea of where maybe a problem stream crossing might be in terms of connectivity. And if you were to click on one of those dots, it's going to bring you, or in one of those earlier stages, if you were to just click on the crossing, it's going to bring you to the actual crossing data. And so for each crossing that was surveyed and uploaded into the database, there will be 4 photos at least: an inlet photo, an outlet photo, an upstream photo, and a downstream photo. Excuse me. And then there's going to be a lot of information here, like down at the bottom of the screen, and it's going to go on and on. So all of the measurements that were taken at that structure as well. So, and you will notice up at the top, I did mention the colored dots. There are 2 scores that are generated once crossing data is entered into the database. This is not something that the person puts into the database. This is something that the NAC database generates and assigns to each crossing. So you're going to see an AOP course screen score, and then you're going to see an aquatic passability score. So the course screen score is categorical. It's either going to say full AOP, no AOP, and then the middle one, some AOP, something like that. But it's really just telling you is there a major problem with this crossing so that aquatic organism passage is really affected, or isn't there? But this passability score is going to drill down a little bit more and explain sort of how does this score in terms of being a passable structure. And so the score goes from 0 to 1. So 0.58 is somewhere in the middle. And let me explain that a little better. But I did mention that this started in, this was rolling in 2015. There's 100,000 stream crossings across the state. And I didn't update this figure, but I've updated it a couple times, and it doesn't ever look tremendously different. We do have some more than 23,000 records for sure in the database in New York now, but it's not 100%. So not all of those 100,000 plus stream crossings do we have data associated with them. So you may not find data for everything. You'll see some areas, you know, the Hudson River Estuary Program does a fantastic job. So you'll see a lot of crossings down there, and some other places that different groups are working is where you'll see a lot of the database populated on the map. So that brings me to this. The data need to be uploaded into the database, and for that, it needs to be collected first. These are the paper survey forms. I mentioned there's also a electronic survey form, so you could just bring a tablet or something into the field. That does make it a little bit easier to upload into the database. So in order to collect data and upload data into the NAC database, there are these roles within NAC. And the first level of training and the first sort of title that's assigned to people who are trained, it's called a lead observer. And so a lead observer is someone who has credentials to be able to go out and collect data at a stream crossing and then upload it into the database. And they're going to do some of the coordination and that sort of work. And they can lead crews, and we can have volunteers as well, but you need at least a lead observer, a trained lead observer to be able to upload data. And so for that, this person will need to complete some online training. It's 16 modules. We call it the protocols training. So complete that online protocols training. They also will need some field training and then shadowing. Shadowing is going out with a lead observer or someone else within NAC, an L1 or an L2. I'll explain that in a second here. And for 20 crossings, so that, you know, we're really sure, the data are being collected correctly. And so there are other levels within NAC. There's L1 or a level 1 coordinator. Those are the people who are going to maybe oversee a group of lead observers or a small geographical area. And they're really also there for this QA/QC piece. So they're going to be looking at those records that were collected by a lead observer and making sure they're good, and then approving them, and then they go into the database. And there are even L2 coordinators, there are even L3 coordinators in Massachusetts. But so L2 coordinators would be someone who oversees a fairly large geographic area, like a large watershed or the state. So I would oversee in New York, so I'm the L2 for New York State. We also have L2s that are overseeing large watersheds. I mentioned the estuary program as an example. But so who's collecting this data? I mean, it's not just DEC, maybe not even mostly DEC. I mean, they're definitely DOT are collecting data, but you know, the soil and water conservation districts have done a really great job. And even as of 2017, I only have that there because, you know, I think we've trained maybe a couple of these other districts. I'm supposed to go to Long Island, but that's all got a little bit derailed because of the current the pandemic and the situation we're in. So, but lots of soil and water conservation districts have trained staff, and they have had trained staff even early on. So, but with the data that have been collected by these folks that are trained, what have we learned so far? So I mentioned that there's that passability scoring. When you go and look at a stream crossing, you're going to see a passability score and this numeric score. Well, that's based on an algorithm of the data that have been uploaded into the database for that crossing. And I just listed what those are, where they're pulling the data from. So it's going to take a measurement of the outlet drop. And again, some of these it's a numeric, it's a number, and some of it's categorical. So does the substrate match the stream, for example? That's more of a yes, no, maybe type of question. But it's going to take those and it's going to weight, and those are going to be weighted, and then that's how you get that score. And I'm going to try to wrap up here because this is a lot, and I want to get to a couple other things as well. So it's maybe a little bit arbitrary. It just sort of every 0.2 you have it moves to another descriptor. But if you get a really poor score based on those parameters of the stream crossing, a really poor score, it would be considered a severe barrier, and that's because there's a really large outlet drop combined with severe constriction and all those types of things that we just looked at on the previous slide. And then it goes from there. So significant barrier, moderate barrier, all the way to a 1. For the most part, if it gets a perfect score, it was probably a bridge. It probably wasn't a culvert. But let me go back, because that's okay. A 0.8 to a 0.99, an insignificant barrier for a culvert for a stream crossing is also really great. So just looking at the data we've collected so far in New York, percentage-wise, sort of breaks down like this. I'm sure this will change the more data that are collected, but just as a quick look, you can see already that, and moderate barriers are usually not, pretty bad as well. So about 35% or about a third. So, if we take that and consider that we have over 100,000 crossings in New York, well, maybe 30,000, 35,000 crossings could be moderate to severe barriers. And some other neat things. So once you have data, and this data is in a database and it's accessible, then you can do things with the data as well. So the data can be mined for different interesting things. So I'm just going to mention a couple of these. So there's this Cornell culverts model which is used to identify undersized culverts. And what that really does is it's a fancy way of sort of looking at a culvert watershed. So what's the area of land that sort of drains into a single culvert, and how does that interact? And so what is both the current and future precipitation, sort of conditions, and what does that mean in terms of flooding scenarios and peak flows and how that stream crossing is interacting there. So that's pretty interesting. And other groups have been working on things and also use NAC data as well. So I mentioned UMass Amherst a lot because they're really important in terms of NAC and this project. And so, this is one of theirs. This is critical linkages. That was to model various scenarios, including dam removal, culvert, and bridge replacements. Okay, that's the notes I have for that slide. Maybe you're familiar with the Nature Conservancy and their prioritization tool, freshwaternetwork.org, also is, I believe, pulling some NAC data. Or sheds or eco sheds, which is the Spatial Hydroecological Decision System. This is the Interactive Catchment Explorer. This one's really neat because you can, choose what you want to look at, and then you can sort of slide these toggles back and forth and change some things on the fly, and then you'll see some of these other things that you pull up on the screen are going to change based upon what you're telling that. So it's just a really neat tool if you've ever had a chance to play around with that. So, but for most people, and people, even myself, what is NAC really good for? So, we use it because you can really learn about specific project sites. If you're going to prepare a permit application or something for replacing a stream crossing, it can be, helpful for that. Certainly I'm going to talk a little bit quickly about funding opportunities, and in the one that I work on, we use NAC to learn about crossings and to help score them for funding in this grant program. It's also used in prioritization in web tools, which I sort of tried to show quickly and maybe a little poorly, but in helping to identify the most appropriate design in considering connectivity and flood resiliency. So, and I did mention, the funding programs. It helps us identify and be able to, sort of rank and score to get to these other two, to get to the end, to get to the, okay, so now we know, we've looked in the NAC database, or we're really trying to figure out and get a handle on, what crossings are out there, what are the really bad ones, and how do we, what's a good way to measure, one crossing to another. It's this, standardized methodology built into NAC. And so once we've done that, if we can link funding to these, culverts that are the most problematic, how do we do that? And then how do we get to the point where we can fix them? Well, one program that I've been involved in, in the past, is a Water Quality Improvement Projects Program, WQIP, which is Competitive statewide reimbursement grant program open to local governments and not-for-profits to implement projects that directly address documented water quality impairments or protect a drinking water source. So in these, and WQIP is really for construction implementation projects. So in my category, it doesn't necessarily have to be absolutely shovel ready, but it has to be close enough so that you can fill out the application form and be pretty certain that the project can be accomplished within 5 years. And so in 2019, which was the last year WQIP was offered, I mean, we did have a big major disruption last year. So I'm just going to go back to 2019. So the category that I am involved with, that I oversee, I'm the technical contact for, is called aquatic connectivity restoration. I also want to mention this non-ag, non-point source category because there's a subcategory that was added in 2019. People can be aware of. So where do you learn more? Obviously, we have a web page, the WQIP web page, the DEC web page. Definitely, if you go there, check it out. If we are able to have our RFA request for applications this year, it would be hopefully maybe around May. So you may want to check. No guarantees in the current situation, but certainly there are WQIP projects, culvert replacement projects that are still happening right now from previous award years. Again, there's a 5-year term. So in my category, the aquatic connectivity restoration category, in 2019, there was a $250,000 limit to the amount of funding per project, 25% match. And then here are some of the details about how it worked again in 2019. So it must focus on culvert, bridge, or dams that are causing aquatic connectivity obstructions. You must actually have the ability to get the project done. It was open to municipalities, soil and water conservation districts, and not-for-profits. This category was. So here's just some of the details about that. But I mentioned that non-point source, that non-ag, non-point source category. Well, there's a subcategory under that called culvert repair and replacement, and the major difference being that the reason for needing the replacement wouldn't have been just aquatic connectivity. So the primary purpose for this category had to be because that structure was causing a problem. It must be to address erosion and/or erosion risk caused by failing or inadequately sized culverts. So, and there's some a little bit different max funding available per project, but still that 25% match requirement. And that's, I'm going to try to wrap up here. And then so this is just an example. This I credit Jared Popoli. This was a WQIP funded project. This is he took this picture, and he was the one responsible for getting this done. So this is what the outlet looked like before, and now this is the inlet. I went and did the closeout inspection for this project. Took this picture, but this is the inlet of the structure afterwards. This is a Trout Unlimited project, a WQIP project on Greenbrook, where the culvert could actually be removed altogether in this scenario. So that was another good WQIP project that we were able to help fund and get done. I believe this one wasn't just Trout Unlimited, but they could be mistaken, but they were a major player. They're fantastic. All right, so I have my time over here, and I was trying to keep it within about 45-50 minutes, and I think I did okay there. So here's my contact information. We do have a few more quiz questions, and so I think there's only 3 more. But do you want to just roll through those, and then we can let folks ask me any questions they might have?
Okay. Yep, we have a few in the chat box already for you.
Excellent.
Here you go.
Okay, so true or false? Streamcontinuity.org/NAC is a good resource to learn more about road crossing, stream connectivity, and NAC. Awesome.
All right, people are paying attention.
They're paying attention, and they're not even trying to trick me. Everybody's being pretty nice. So thank you for that.
Let's go to the next one. Ready?
Sure.
For question 4. Here we go.
Okay. So the initial level of NAC training required to collect field data and upload to the database is called, is that an L1 coordinator, an L2 coordinator, a lead observer, or a trainer? Now, my hope is that some people learned some things from this presentation that this wasn't already known, but this is obviously a great audience. People know their stuff. And so, yeah, that's correct. It's the lead observer is that initial level of training you need to be able to get a password and go out and collect data and upload data into the database.
Okay.
And just one more, and I think the last one's a pretty easy question as well.
Wait,
I'm sure we'll do well.
And this, one more. Question 5. Ready? There we go.
Sure. So, in closing, a stream can be thought of as a long linear ecosystem, an ecosystem that provides habitat and habitat connection for a range of aquatic and semi-aquatic organisms, an ecosystem that can be disrupted or even disconnected by undersized or improperly placed culverts. So, I would have accepted any, but everyone is correct. Well, almost everyone's correct. Yeah, the right answer is, yeah, all of the above. Awesome.
All right.
Should I open the chat box or just?
You can if you want, or I can read them too, but it might be, I can sort of read them for folks too, because and not everybody can see the chat box. So Rebecca wants you to know that Wyoming is now trained. Wyoming County Soil and Water District, I'm thinking. Okay.
Excellent. Excellent.
Randy is asking about, is there a rule about changing out 3 culverts that cross a road to a single larger culvert that will be embedded into the stream? If there is a law or a rule, I would love to access that to explain this to others.
So I'm not sure I understand the question. So there are 3 undersized crossings, and then they all kind of contribute into a single crossing. And is there some sort of? And I'm not, unless I'm misinterpreting the question. I don't believe so.
Randy, I'm going to try to give Randy.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, so there's 3 culverts in the same stream crossing underneath the road.
Yeah.
They need to be changed, and I am trying to convince people, I'm the highway superintendent, that I need to change to one larger to accommodate the 1.25 of this entire stream.
Yep.
So that being said, I'm catching, because of cost, I'm catching a lot of grief that it's going to cost way too much money. And if I could find a rule or law or something that DEC, state of New York, anything has, then I would have, something to stand on.
Right. So this is a multiple culvert situation on a single crossing. So these are side by side. So there's three crossings and the streams flowing through those. We do have, so I mean, the rule or the law would be if this requires a permit, and even if it's covered under a general permit, I mean, I'm not sure about the specific situation there, but then yes, I mean, potentially we as permit issuance standards, we would look at our guidelines that are on the webpage that I pointed to, and we do talk about a single structure. We talk about that 1.25 times, but really you'd have to sort of work with, in terms of anything from DEC, from our agency, you work with your regional permit person. And then the biologist in the region that's going to be working on, if it was what we call an Article 15 permit, if that was needed, or even potentially if you needed a 401 water quality certification for the project. I mean, that's possible, I guess. Then yeah, you may be looking at some of these as more of requirements, but it really depends on, whether or not you're required to get a permit for that structure or not. Some smaller streams that, don't have those protections. And so there aren't really those hard requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and then Beverly wants to know if beavers are working upstream from a culvert, how do you address a potential beaver blockage in designing a culvert installation? And I can let Beverly speak if she needs to clarify that anymore.
Okay. I mean, that's such a great question. I don't know, Beverly, if you want to add to that, but.
Yeah, we've been through the permit thing already. So for one part of it, because there's also classified wetlands involved as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a constant issue up here, not just with our pond, which goes into a stream, but a lot of the roadways around here too. So how would you design a culvert with beavers in mind.
So is the purpose because so beavers, they hear flowing water and running water and it attracts them and they want to dam that up, right? So is the problem that they're actually getting too close to the structure and they're causing, are they interacting with the structure somehow?
They have actually filled the structure,
Okay.
the one on the roadway, and we've seen the mass explosion, which happens when a car goes over.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of these, and that's the tough thing for me, is these really site-specific type of questions. I mean, certainly going out there and looking and evaluating, and maybe if we have your contact information, I can try to see if there's someone in your region that I could maybe connect you with or something. But yeah, I mean, I know
we're actually working with a certified wildlife specialist that is going to be installing a water leveler on one end of that to really circumvent the beavers from that trickling noise, and hopefully that'll help one side, but there's a lot of other sides.
Yeah, and I have seen there are some things that I'm, again, just as a generalization, that I'm not crazy about. I've seen like some like rebar type of mesh and fencing and different things that are placed like to and maybe in some situations those are to keep beavers a little bit further away and things like that. I mean, yeah, that's actually kind of a tough one. I haven't dealt with that very much, and so there's probably a better answer for you that I just don't have. But yeah, that I can see how that could be frustrating.
Well, I got your email. I'll touch base with you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Beverly. I'm going to go to Frank. He's next, and I'm going to let him ask his question. Hold on a second. Let me get him. All right, Frank, are you with us? Do you want to ask your question for Corbin?
Oh, you're on mute, Frank.
Yeah, unmute yourself. Okay.
I apologize. So obviously you just gave us a bit of an overview.
Yes.
And just in the literature, I keep seeing the term like critical flow rate and whatnot. And obviously this has to do with the aquatic ecosystems. I was just wondering your take on how is each variable measured when giving a score? I'm just a bit curious, that's all.
Yeah, so for NAC, so there's yeah, there's a lot of different terminology out there for streams. I mean, a lot of it is the same and it crosses over. So there's there are people that really know their stuff with streams, and they may have been trained in sort of the Roskin methodology, and they're going to be using a certain set of terminology for that. And there are others there, Army Corps in the past has done some really great training, and NRCS, and there's, different terminology for different types of things. A lot of it's the same though. So as far as what we measure within NAC, I mean, it sort of has its own set of terminology. A lot of it has to do with sort of the structures and things. And so what one person might call like a perch structure, for example, we really refer to as an outlet drop. So there are some things like that. But I guess maybe could you remind me of the question sort of in terms of the terminology and and how we use terminology and how we measure things?
Sure. So you mentioned that there was like an aquatic passability score.
Yes. Yep.
And I was just thinking about how the flow rate of a culvert would affect that score. And I was just curious if let's just say that a culvert has a ludicrously high flow rate. Would that be considered a barrier?
Yep. It does factor into that score. I'm fairly certain that that's one of those categorical things that factor in. So the way it's measured when you're looking in NAC is it just asks, because people aren't going out there with flow meters, and so the form is going to ask you, is it faster inside the structure or slower? Sometimes a structure could actually, be wide and flat, and so you could actually get the flow could actually slow down within the structure. And so it's going to ask questions like that. That's going to get at it, but that's how it gets, and it is going to sort of convert those back into that numerical score. But specifically for the flow, that is more categorical. I know that there's data out there and there's information out there about fish swimming speeds and burst speeds and things like that, because there are some fish that do much better, even in an undersized culvert. They can sustain a burst speed for long enough maybe to get through. And so there's some at least general information like that. And there are some fish, even if you have a scour pool depth that is just right, some fish can even jump. But generally speaking, if the water is speeding up, even without measuring it with the flow, I mean, we have some sophisticated stuff like flow meters, but most people don't. So, but if the structure is interacting with the stream such that it's increasing the flow inside the structure, or sort of spilling out of the structure and causing scour, that's a good indication that it's disrupting aquatic organism passage. I don't know if that was helpful, but
Was.
So, sorry. Thanks, Frank. So one of your counterparts and one of my counterparts here in Watertown, Emily Sheridan, brought up the fact that New York State DOT bridge funding was announced today. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but can I put you on the spot and see what you know about it, and if you want to talk to that? If not, that's fine. We yeah.
No, I really can't. I mean, I've been trying to look at everything I can, and I wasn't even aware of that. I've been sort of trying to follow the governor and the budget and all of this stuff, and just seeing, I know climate resiliency is important right now. And so I'm following these things, but yeah, I just don't have anything to add to that, but it's great if some funding's becoming available.
I'm going to put this in the chat, because I think that just went to me. So let's put this to everybody. Let me see if did that go out? Right. So this is from Emily and I. This is sort of the Grants Gateway announcement. And then there's a webinar on February 16th for folks that are interested in applying for that kind of funding. And now I have one last question from Jesse. Jesse, if you don't mind, I think it's nice if you want to ask this question of Corbin yourself. You can feel free to unmute yourself and talk to Corbin.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
I can.
So I'm currently a college student and I'm about to graduate this year. So I was wondering how you got to be where you are today.
Great question. I love that question. Can I ask where you go to college?
SUNY Poly.
Oh, neat. So interestingly, I don't know, long story. I last year, this presentation when it was going to be live, it was going to be at JCC, Jefferson Community College in Watertown. And I did actually go to JC. I started out after high school. I went to the local community college, which was JCC, and got a math science degree there, and graduated in 1998. And then I went on then really figured out what I wanted to do, and went on to some additional college. I went to SUNY ESF. So really getting getting your degree in whatever it is you're interested in doing. For my job, really to work for New York State, you need to first be qualified, and then second, take civil service exams. At the time I did it, it was they were job-specific civil service exams, and now they're doing more of something called a PCO, or a Professional Careers Opportunities exam. And then whatever your education and experience is, or however you qualify, then they'll place, you can be placed for interviews and that sort of thing off of a list. But to work for this New York State, you need to be on a list. I will say that my journey to become where I am right now, I started as an educator. At Luzerne Campground on Fourth Lake, kind of near Warrensburg, and then I was a seasonal fish and wildlife technician, and I did some lots of stuff, mostly with mammals actually. And then I worked at a New York State fish hatchery, the Salmon River Hatchery, for 3 years. And then I was hired as a biologist doing, I was a restoration ecologist. So I was restoring streams and that sort of thing on big remediation projects. And then from there, I was promoted into this job. So that was sort of my journey, but just, education. And then if you're interested in working for a DEC, especially, you take some civil service exams. There are some, like our technicians right now, I believe, are just they're from goer postings. So just pay attention to the job postings, and maybe you would even qualify for something like a technician level. And that's a good start.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no more questions, I would just say thank you so much. That was a wealth of information. I learned a lot tonight. I want to thank our participants for being with us tonight. This was live on YouTube. So if you were to go to the YouTube channel or to YouTube and Google New York State Tug Hill Commission, you'd get to our YouTube channel. And if you want to share this recording, that's great. I'll also send it out in an email tomorrow so you know where to find it. Thank you. Thanks, Corbin. And thank you to everybody that came on today. Tonight, yeah, this is sad. 2020 and 2021 now have spoiled our plans for local government conference in person anyway. So I appreciate you taking the time to go through your slides and talk to us tonight.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed this. Thank you for having me.
All right. Maybe we'll see you again in the future very soon.
Great.
All right. Take care, everyone. Good night.